No known ship in history justifies what I'm about to show you. The largest vessel of the 17th century, a first-rate man of war, fully loaded, fully armed, had a draft of 5 meters. 5 meters from the waterline to the bottom of the keel. That is the deepest any wooden ship ever needed a harbor to be. The harbors are not 5 meters deep. The stone foundations of the Amsterdam Harbor District descend 47 meters below the waterline. London's pre-Victorian docks, 38 meters. San Francisco Bay, a city that didn't exist before 1849, the bedrock anchoring of its harbor structures reaches 52 meters into the bay floor. 10 times deeper than any known ship required. Not in one port, in every major port on Earth. The same impossible depth, the same over-engineered stone, the same anomalies buried underneath, and the same classified reports that followed when those anomalies were found. You've seen this channel cover Tartarian architecture, the resonance towers, the free energy cathedrals, the infrastructure of a civilization that the official record insists never existed. These harbors are part of the same system. This is what Tartarian maritime infrastructure looks like when you strip away a century of silt and concrete. The official history tells us about wooden ships and canvas sails. It does not tell us what these harbors were actually built for. I've spent 3 years trying to answer that question. What I found is that the ships we were told existed couldn't have filled these harbors any more than a rowboat fills a dry dock. Something else was here. Something that moved through the water, not on it. Something large enough and strange enough that the institutions which found its infrastructure decided the safest response was to fill it with concrete and reduce the documentation to 11 pages. This is what the harbors were actually built for. In 1865, Amsterdam undertook routine harbor dredging. The canals had silted up. The work crews were to clear the channels and deepen the shipping lanes for the new steam vessels. What they found instead was not documented in the official reports. Not because it wasn't discovered, because the discovery was quietly absorbed into a category labeled, and I am quoting the archive directly, "Непредвиденные препятствия." Unforeseen obstacles. Beneath the accumulated silt, at depths between 30 and 45 meters, the dredging equipment encountered structures. Not natural rock, not organic sediment, structures. The engineering reports, available in the Amsterdam City Archive, reference number in the description, describe what the crews found as regulatory potoka z nieizwiestnym mechanizmem upravlenia, flow regulators of unknown operating mechanism. Read that phrase again, flow regulators with an operating mechanism. This is not geology, this is not Roman drainage, this is infrastructure designed to control something, to direct it, regulate it, manage its pressure and direction. Stone chambers, fitted without mortar. The joint tolerances measured in the subsequent survey were recorded at less than 0.3 millimeters. I want you to sit with that number, 0.3 millimeters. That is the tolerance of precision machining, achieved today only with computerized cutting equipment. Not with hand tools and wooden templates, not at 40 meters below the waterline. But the structures were there. And there was something else. Running through the stone, not applied to it, not attached, but embedded inside the material itself, were filaments of a metal alloy that the 1865 survey identified as iron-copper composite but could not categorize further. Metal armature cast into stone. At depths no known vessel of the period had any reason to reach, at tolerances no known technology of the period could achieve. The official explanation, where one was offered at all, was that these were remnants of Roman hydraulic infrastructure, later enhanced by medieval engineers. Roman hydraulics. At 45 meters depth, with sub-millimeter tolerances and embedded metal composite armature. The silence in that explanation is deafening. Here is what the engineering logic suggests. A harbor built to those specifications is not a harbor for surface vessels. It is a harbor for something operating under significant hydrostatic pressure. Something that requires zero-tolerance stone construction, because the forces involved would destroy anything less precise. The ships of the Old World did not float on the surface of the water. They moved through it. In 1915, San Francisco hosted the Panama Pacific International Exposition. The construction of the exposition grounds required extensive work in the bay: pile driving, foundation laying, seabed preparation. The engineers encountered something they were not prepared for. Buried in the bedrock of the bay floor, at depths between 35 and 52 meters, they found cylindrical metal structures. The survey report, filed with the Army Corps of Engineers in June 1915 and subsequently classified for reasons the Corps described only as national infrastructure concerns, describes them as follows. Cylindrical towers, approximately 4 meters in diameter, constructed of an unknown copper-iron alloy, oriented vertically with their bases anchored in the bedrock and their upper ends open, facing the water column above. The alloy was notable. Standard iron corrodes in salt water within decades. Standard copper oxidizes within a century. These structures showed neither. The metal surface, according to the survey, appeared, and I am quoting, as though recently manufactured. They had been in the bay floor for an unknown period before 1849. They looked like they had been installed last year. One of the survey engineers, a man named Harlan Reese, whose personal correspondence was included in the classified addendum, wrote a single line in his field notes that the official report did not reproduce. When we completed the circuit, the water around the cylinder began to vibrate at a frequency I have never encountered. Not felt, heard, like a chord being played by an instrument with no name. The report noted that the structures, when a test current was applied to the surrounding water, produced measurable electromagnetic effects at a distance of approximately 40 meters. I want you to understand what that means. Tesla's first public demonstration of wireless power transmission occurred in 1891. These structures were in San Francisco Bay before the city existed, and they were already doing what Tesla spent his entire career trying to prove was possible. The official explanation for these findings was, again, notable for what it did not say. The 1915 report was classified. The subsequent excavation reports described only geological anomalies. The cylindrical structures were incorporated into the exposition foundation work and buried under concrete. Buried. Not studied, not preserved, not presented to the scientific community. Buried. Here is what the physical evidence suggests. The Tartarian maritime system used electromagnetic traction, motive force transmitted through water, received by vessels with resonant hull systems powered by a worldwide network of underwater towers. The harbor depth was not for the hulls, it was for the field. There is a third anomaly that nobody talks about. It has nothing to do with depth measurements or electromagnetic readings. It is hiding in plain sight, in the buildings themselves. When you're studying the harbor infrastructure, you start noticing the doors. A standard commercial door in 17th century Europe was 7 feet, 2.1 meters. That's what every carpenter's manual specifies. That's what you find in every house, every shop, every church of the era. Then you walk into the operational buildings of the old harbor districts, the control rooms, the instrument galleries, the mechanism chambers of Amsterdam, London, Hamburg, Lisbon, Genoa. And the doors are not 2.1 meters. They are between 4.2 and 4.8 meters tall. The primary operational doors, the doors that led to the harbor control rooms, the instrument galleries, the mechanism chambers, measure between 4.2 and 4.8 meters in height, 15 feet. The instrument consoles documented in the Hamburg harbor records of 1712, before the renovation that replaced them, show control wheels with diameters of approximately 2 meters, levers with throw distances that require an arm span of roughly 3 meters to operate through their full range, instrument panels mounted at heights that place the primary gauges at approximately 2.8 meters above the floor. A standard human being, 1.7 to 1.8 meters tall, cannot reach those gauges, cannot operate those levers through their full range, cannot turn those wheels with any mechanical efficiency. These instruments were not designed for us. We are living in the operational facilities of a civilization whose physical operators stood somewhere between 3 and 4 meters tall. The harbors were deep enough for their ships. The doors were tall enough for their crews. The instruments were sized for their hands. And we inherited the infrastructure without inheriting the knowledge of what it was. We are, in the most precise sense of the phrase, technological orphans living on the ruins of a masterpiece. We walk through doors built for giants and call it architectural style. We look at instrument consoles sized for hands that could palm a ship's wheel like a dinner plate and catalog them as decorative maritime artifacts. The scale is not decorative. The scale is documentation of who built this and what they were. If you've watched our video on the giant skeletons found in excavation sites across North America and Europe, the pieces are connecting now. Those weren't anomalies of nature. Those were the operators of this system. The people sized for these doors, the hands built for these wheels, the civilization that ran these harbors before the reset erased them from the record. The ports were built for their ships. The buildings were built for their bodies. Both are still here. Both are still the wrong size for us. You can verify this today. The Scheepvaart House in Amsterdam, the shipping house, built in 1916 on the foundations of the original Harbor Authority complex, retained the primary operational corridor of its predecessor. The corridor is open to the public. The doors measure 4.3 meters. Walk through one. Stand inside it. Look up at the frame above your head and understand that whoever specified that height was not specifying it for you. After the mud flood, after the reset, after whatever the official record calls the mid-19th century transition, something happened to the documentation. Not gradually, suddenly. Amsterdam, 1847, Harbor Survey, 340 pages, depth measurements, structural assessments, anomalous readings. Amsterdam, 1871, follow-up survey after the 1865 discovery, 11 pages. 11. They found the flow regulators. They found the zero-tolerance stone. They found the metal armature inside the rock. Then they wrote 11 pages and recommended filling it with concrete for reasons of public safety. London, 1868, Thames Riverbed Survey, classified addendum, still withheld, 157 years. The Public Records Office confirms it exists. They will not release it. San Francisco, 1917. 3 Army Corps engineers request a follow-up investigation into the cylindrical towers. Request denied. All 3 transferred to administrative positions within 90 days. They found it. They measured it. They classified the drawings. They rewrote the history. And they poured concrete over everything that remained. That is not negligence. That is a decision.
Here is what I keep returning to. The structures are still there. Under the concrete, under the silt, under the fill. Not destroyed, covered. And coverage is not the same as termination. A machine that has been buried is not a machine that has been turned off. It is a machine that is running in the dark. What is it that still hums beneath our harbor floors? The official record has no answer. It has 11 pages where 300 once existed, and a note recommending that we fill it in for reasons of public safety. The tide comes in twice a day. The water knows what is down there. We are the only ones who don't.
Here is what we actually know. Pre-1800 harbors are 10 times deeper than any documented ship required. The Amsterdam dredging found precision stone infrastructure at 45 meters that no known technology of the period could have built. San Francisco Bay contained electromagnetic towers that predate Tesla by at least half a century, now buried under exposition concrete. The operational buildings of every major harbor on Earth have doors sized for something that stands between 3 and 4 meters tall. And every time someone got close to documenting this properly, the reports got shorter, the files got classified, and the engineers got transferred. That is not coincidence. That is a pattern. The Scheepvaart House in Amsterdam is open to the public. Go stand in the corridor. Look up at the doorframe. That is the most honest thing the old world left us. A doorway built for the people who ran the system we no longer know how to turn on. Next, the Baltic harbors, Riga, Tallinn, Gdansk. The anomalies there are older. The concrete is more recent. If this opened something you can't close, you know what to do.